So for the first 20 years of my life, I very much operated in music industry, touring, seeing the world, doing all those things. But the process also damaged me because I was operating out of, is this damn eyelash? Wow, let's just keep it real. No, operating out of brokenness. And that relates back to my story because my mother was murdered.
Hey, this is Ed, and welcome to another episode of the Voyage Cast. Today we are thrilled to dive into an extraordinary tale of resilience and transformation with our esteemed guest, Denay. Raised under the oppressive apartheid system in South Africa, Denay's journey is a testament to the triumph of the human spirit over adversity. Her tale weaves us through the civil unrest of 1994 that tragically took her mother's life, her subsequent depths of despair, and the intense journey towards healing and purpose. So join us as we delve into Denay's inspiring story, her transformation from pain to power, and how she harnessed her experiences to create profound change within her community.
Well, I'm a twin, so we were 15 when my mother was murdered, and she was murdered during the sort of uprisings that arose out of South Africa becoming a democracy. So we lived in apartheid, which I don't know if you know too much about, but it's...
Can you share?
Apartheid was a legal form of segregation in South Africa for over 40, 50 years, where society was divided into races. So white, black, colored. I'm colored, that means you're mixed. So white, black, colored, and Indian. And it was a system based on white supremacy. So everybody of color was considered subhuman, and we were relegated to the outskirts of the city, and we were put in the worst living areas. There were white-only beaches, there were white-only buses, there were white-only education systems, and people of color were treated as subhuman in every facet of life. So, yeah, as insane as that sounds, that was the reality for a lot of that was the reality for South Africans. So coming back to my story, in 1994, South Africa celebrated its democracy, meaning the end of apartheid and moving into a system of freedom and democracy for all. But in that same year, my mother was murdered in the uprisings or the violence that erupted over our new constitution, primarily because there were many people of color who felt that once we had achieved democracy in 1994, they wanted revenge on the white powers that be. So there were two factions. There were those who wanted the pathway of peace and arbitration, and there were those that wanted to sort of take the path of violence and retribution. And so out of that, we had civil uprising in pockets within South Africa, and my mother passed, ironically, in one of those incidences. She was hijacked.
That's so
murdered.
sad.
Yeah. So anyway, that formed a lot of my brokenness, and did not go for therapy, grew up in a church that did not... we're not talking about this, but anyway, I'm just trying to describe all the factors of brokenness that relate.
Yeah.
So did not go for therapy, was reared in a broken community, or as it was, which was systemically rooted in gangsterism, crime, sexual perversion, all the various things that make up for a broken community when you are subjected to, the notion that you are less than. So I'm talking about the evils of white supremacy, but any kind of cultural, racial, economic bigotry. That's what you leave people feeling subhuman, and so they grow up with the idea that they are less than. So nothing matters. Life doesn't matter. And that has severe consequences in terms of how people live out their lives. So my mother's death, and I would say the lack of maybe nurturing around that sort of pain led to maybe 10, 15 years of brokenness and living in my gifts within my brokenness. Does that make sense? And so when I got to 30, I kind of exited it all. So I left it all behind, because my dreams and living in my purposes was an unhealthy space because I was unhealthy. And until I dealt with my brokenness at 39 for the first time, going to therapy at 39 years old and dealing with the death of my mom, dealing with all the kind of cobwebs around the effects of, I think, growing up in a very racialized society. Until I had dealt with all of that, I wouldn't be ready to go back into music, which is probably now. Sorry, that's a summary.
Wow, that's
around all of that.
There's so much in that.
Yes, it is.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I'm out of that context.
I mean, well, I was just telling Matt that I think in South Africa, and I think for a lot of third world / developing worlds, violence is such a natural part of your everyday life that you just become immune to it. You become numb to it. And actually you learn to survive through it. And you always have a choice. That's the thing. You always have a choice. You have a choice to be a victim, or you have a choice to rise above your own pain. And as I was telling Matt, rise above your own pain and make that purposeful, not only for yourself, but I think that once you make that purposeful for yourself, you then create a pathway for other people to walk through their own healing and transformation. Because if you can, everybody can, you know? Mm-hmm.
What do you think the turning point was for you when you were able to find your purpose and make that shift?
Well, I think I always knew that my purpose was in music, as I'm talking about. As that I believe every child has a dream, and you know your purpose from very young in life. And I was always one of those kids that believed that I could make a difference in the world with my gifts, as with everybody else, you know. And then life happened. And so to answer your question, I think there were a number of turning points in terms of understanding that my gift is my primary weapon, you know, and my primary means of mobility in life. But I think it's taken me 40 years to get to the place of freedom and health and true freedom in my expression of those gifts, because I'm not operating in my talents because I'm insecure. I'm not operating within my talents because I feel like I need to compensate. I need to prove something. I need to be somebody. I am authentically in the place of operating in my gifts because I feel I have something to say, and I feel that I have something to give. You know, and it's because I don't want to leave this life with not having deposited that into the soil of this earth, you know, for others.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Your gifts have always lived inside of you.
Yes.
But you were using them in ways to try to find worth and meaning or hide behind our insecurities. Yes. And now you get to use them for relief and freedom and joy and a blessing to others.
Right. And truly so.
Yeah.
Because I think the aspiration or the intention was always to do that. But until you are whole, and that's the biggest lesson for me, I think, you know, until you are whole and you are operating out of a sense of your authentic self, you will never,
you might not achieve whatever that gift fully is.
The fullness of it. Yeah. Because you might achieve. I mean, I got to see the world. I got to meet so many people, did this, that, and whatever. But I was still broken, which meant that as much as, you know, the facade was that I had a great life and I was touring and doing this and that, always an overachiever, right? Always having to do and achieve whatever. Behind that was a broken little girl. You know, so my ceiling in terms of achievement, if I could reach for the stars, I was always just kind of operating underneath it, because even though the world might have seen a persona of my projection of self-confidence and all these kind of things, behind all of that, I was broken. I was broken as a woman, broken as a girl. And that, but if you don't deal with that, you will never really reach the fullness of the expression of your gifts, you know, because you can't when you're not really doing it for the right reasons. Do you know what I mean?
Sorry to interrupt, but if you're looking for additional wellness services in the Denver metro area, check out Voyage's Wellness Group. We can be reached at vwell.group. That's VWELL.group. Now, back to your regularly scheduled program.
Now, the headspace that you're in, what message do you want your music to portray? What do you want to deposit in the soil?
I would say you don't have to wait or prolong your suffering and your pain. You know, being able to be vulnerable, being able to unpeel and take off all of the layers and the masks that we wear all the time is what enables you to get to this place of just peace and freedom and comfortability within yourself. Where, I mean, I'm not having this conversation to prove anything to anybody. I'm at a place where I'm okay with me. I'm okay with the world. I'm okay with everybody in my life, the people who murdered my mom. I'm okay with all of the injustices that might have been done to me, rightly or wrongly. And I'm at a place of real peace and freedom. And what I'm saying is we all have, I would say to anybody, don't wait to getting to that place. You do the work that's involved in terms of forgiving, dealing, facing, overcoming, to liberate yourself and get to the space where you are able to say, hey, this is me, this is my life, and this is what I have to give, this is what I want to give.
By being vulnerable, you are liberating.
You give other people permission to be vulnerable, I think, when you have the strength to kind of just be you and do you.
It's kind of interesting too. I tell this to my clients a lot that have went through a lot of pain and suffering in their childhood and through their lives, that they had armor. You referred to it a lot as brokenness, but that brokenness and that armor protected them as well.
Correct.
So living through and before apartheid ended, watching your mom pass away, amongst other things, I'm sure, you needed that protection. You dealt with life and got through life by having some of those walls up, by having some of those ways of protecting yourself, and they were needed.
Yes.
And it's not until we get to a place where we feel safe, then we can start to say, it's okay for me to take this shoulder protection off. Now I can take this arm protection off. And you just start slowly taking that armor that protected you.
Yes.
So there may have been brokenness in a lot of the things that you did, but you also did a lot. You also accomplished a lot even within that, whether it was within music, and maybe you can share some of the other stuff that you did in your life. You know, I know you started a school. I know that you've got a lot of education, and a lot of that happened before, you know, you started, you know, that profound healing. So maybe take us and talk through that a little.
When you're in it, you're not acutely aware of the processes, good or bad, that are keeping you going. I am now, I think, being older, I'm able to look back and analyze and scrutinize, you know, the things that helped me, that were good, and the things that were not so good, but still propelled me. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think we do the best that we can until it's time for change. You know, so one of the philosophies I think that kept me going, even in my brokenness, was a sense that I wanted to change the world. And a big inspiration for me was the life of Nelson Mandela. I don't know if you know Nelson Mandela. So he was one of our freedom fighters that fought for freedom in South Africa throughout the years of apartheid. And I mean, he was incarcerated. He was a lawyer. And, you know, during those times, it was a real anomaly for a person of color to be a lawyer, to be a doctor, to be anything, because our education that was served to people of color was so substandard. It was designed to keep people of color, quote unquote, as barbarians. You know, so for any person of color to aspire beyond the cage or beyond the bracket that they were not only metaphorically put in, but literally, because we were literally put into education systems and social systems that were limiting. You know, so for anybody who could aspire and work through and torpedo through structures that have been, you know, embossed around him was a real inspiration to me. So one of the in my brokenness, one of the inspirations that I always had was to, number one, use my gifts to change the world, And number two, after my mom's death, was an understanding that you have a choice and that you can use pain as power and turn that into purpose. And so when my mother died, obviously within the process, I wanted to, like Nelson Mandela, who was incarcerated for 27 years because of his work as a freedom fighter in the movement. He was put in Robben Island for 27 years in solitary confinement. And I thought, well, if he could, and the story being that he was in solitary confinement for 27 years and then he was released and in 1994 and became our first president. So if he could endure 27 years of solitary confinement and all that comes with that sort of mental, physical black hole, I can do the same. And so my mother's death, she was killed in violence. And her and my dad were both ministers in the faith, and she had lived her latter life as well as a preschool teacher. And so I wanted to then kind of build a school for the disadvantaged youth in Cape Town as a part of effecting change in the new South Africa, which needed to be rebuilt, providing opportunity and access for not only kids of color, but kids who did not have enough money. So along with a team of other people who helped financially and otherwise, my dream to kind of build a community school that would allow broken kids the opportunity to study performing arts in a subsidized way was started in 2010. But the story behind it, which a lot of people don't know, was that it was inspired by my mom's death and wanting to, in my own life, I think, turn that kind of excruciating pain into power, but not self-gratifying power. I mean the power to take the choice within my own life of either going on a pathway of, just kind of messing it up completely, because why? I have every right to. When you feel that your mother's been taken and it's murder and all these things, you have a choice to either go down the path of self-destruction, which could be, like you say, an armor, because it really is the most...
It's devastating.
Yeah, harrowing pain at 15 years old, to lose your mom. Just like that. So you have the choice to go down the path of self-destruction, because it's a rude awakening to life, very rude, or you can take that and build a life that not only inspires you, but inspires a generation, and so that was the inspiration for building the school, which is now 13 years old, and we have over 500 graduates. As I was telling Matt, many of whom have become first-time university goers, first-time business owners, first-time, and that's huge for people of color. When generationally they've been denied the opportunity to go to university, they've been denied the opportunity to function in the marketplace, they've been denied the opportunity to just dream. And I think that's the wonderful thing about your country, is that you are encouraged to dream and be all, But, I think coming from young democratic societies, it's not the same. We are still building those infrastructures and those societal norms and those mindsets. So, I think just to give somebody who comes from, because all of our students mostly come from broken former townships. And when I say township, it denotes the understanding that they come from communities that are economically less, and so poverty mindset, poverty, all kinds of stuff, all the kind of, I think, the makeup of a broken society. So gangsterism, crime, violence, substance abuse, all those kind of things. Our kids come from that at the school, and they are given free education, subsidized education for 2 years, and they leave as graduates with qualifications that allow them to go on to university, qualifications that allow them to start their own little businesses in the creative and cultural industries, or they come back as interns and work for the academy as teachers or as admins, as marketers, or they go and work for one of our sponsors.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Denay, there is so much pain in your story, and I love how you keep saying there's power. And what you've done is there is so much power and there's so much hope.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think a lot of people listening that have been through really traumatic, unfair life circumstances hear you. And I want you to share a little bit about how you got to that mindset and that choice of not allowing these circumstances to define you and then to go down, because pain is power. And you can go down that destructive path or you can go down that more positive path. And you chose the more positive path. So like how did you come to that? Like you had every right to be angry. You had every right to be resentful. And earlier you said that you're okay with the people that murdered your mom. And you actually used the word forgiveness. How did you get there?
Yeah, that's fairly miraculous.
Well, I think it's a decision. It's been a journey to forgive. And it's been a journey to understand the realities of life and to still find within all those kind of introspective moments and processes, hope, joy, peace. And I think that largely comes from my roots in my faith. Even though I have experienced much, I grappled very much with my faith when my mother was murdered because my mom and dad were both pastors. Are you telling me, God, are you telling me that she deserved to go that way? You know? And then just a number of other related, thoughts. So
I think grief is such a process.
It
right?
is,
Like we
it
never
is.
one day just become okay with it.
No.
Right?
No.
And to lose such an important person in your life, girlfriend, like it's okay to allow that grief to come up.
Yes.
It's real. It's
Yes.
human.
Yes. And I think, though, just in answering your question, my faith plays a big role, I think, in shaping, even in my brokenness, my determination to still be okay, even though I wasn't okay. But, my faith did form a big part of my desire to still be a good person in spite of trauma and the absolute tremors of life, So hope has always been a thing on the inside of me. I think the need to always turn something bad into something good has always been something on the inside of me, but I believe that was nurtured. So are you born with gifts? Yes, I do believe, but I also believe, so moms and dads, you play a role in nurturing teachers, you play a role, communities, you play a role in depositing these seeds of greatness on the inside of little ones,
How did your dad respond to instilling that hope in you?
So we grew up in a home that was kind of very legalistic, where my dad was a pastor of a church where you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. And you have two colorful twins, So I very much thought my life was always quite suppressed. And not only that, so having grown up for 2 or 3 years in the States and then as a kid and then being put back into this box of so growing up in a democratic, liberal society and then flying back home to South Africa and being put in this box of I'm colored, I have to go to a colored school. All of that was a part of our childhood. My dad and my mom were exceptional. They defied the norms of the day. And in a very, I think, subconscious way, they showed us and exemplified a pathway of choosing to be more than your circumstances, choosing to rise above when people say no, choosing to take opportunities no matter how hard you have to work for it. Because it was, so I'm talking about the fact that as people of color, they still found a way to leave South Africa, which was hard for people of color, and to find an opportunity in the States to pursue Bible and theology, which is what they wanted to do. So I think as parents, they communicated to us as kids that, you don't have to be the status quo. You don't have to accept an external sense of who you are.
You're defined outside of your circumstances.
Yes, you're defined by who God says you are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's limitless.
I think a lot of people struggle being defined by their circumstances and feeling constricted and trapped and boxed in.
Right. And sometimes, you know, you need help out of those spaces.
What were some of the people in your life that provided that help?
I would say teachers, girlfriends, sisters, mentors that have kind of all played a role in helping me out of a hole or onto the next step.
Do you stay in contact with any of those individuals?
I do.
I can see they're very meaningful for you.
Yeah.
I see a lot of plane flights for you in your future.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I do love my family, but I'm also very happy to be with Micah in this community.
Yeah.
You know, so the story is, I'm a very, very late bloomer, everybody. I mean, I am, you know, yeah, I'm Micah, this is my first marriage. I'm 40. So I am very excited to, I mean, Micah feels like my home for the first time in 40 something years. I feel like I've lived alone since my mom died, you know, in this world. And finally to meet somebody who reciprocates and who really just plugs into who I am in such a way that is so natural and organic is what I've been looking for, I would say, for a very long time.
Well, congratulations on getting married.
Oh, thank you.
So Micah's dad, Curtis, went down to South Africa as a missionary.
Right.
Met your dad, Denville, and they worked together hand in hand to kind of fight apartheid and do what they could in the communities down there. You were born, Micah was born in South Africa, and you guys went to school together, and your families obviously are very close. And then they moved back to the States, meaning Curtis and his family and Micah. And maybe you can take it from there.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the history we share. Then in terms of meeting Micah, again, I hate to say it, guys, but Facebook. Really, Facebook. So about a year and a half ago, and I hate to say it, I think it was me who probably said hi, but it was hi because was
it like hi or was it like
guys,
hey?
I had made peace with the fact that I was going to live like Paul and be single all my life. Really, I was at that point. So, you know, I think he had a picture with these two kids, and I just said, hey, how gorgeous, or something like that. And then he commented, and I replied like a month later to it. But then we just started kind of chatting. But in an instant, it was like chatting books. Do you know what I mean? Like books of a text. And I mean, how boring. Sorry, Sydney. How boring. But,
It's
you know,
sweet.
like we just instantly clicked. And I knew instantly.
So did he.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember talking.
Oh, my God.
I remember talking to him, and he's like, I met somebody, Matt. I met somebody. And his demeanor was totally different. Like, it was awesome.
Oh.
What I love about this love story is God's creating things years ahead of time that we don't see.
Yes.
And planting seeds and preparing hearts and orchestrating things.
Yes.
And 40 young years later.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And then he brings you guys together in your guys' wholeness. Because Micah also came on to our podcast and shared his story of brokenness. And now it's this beautiful union that you guys get to share and be whole together in.
Yeah, that sums it up really well. And that's the other thing I would say is that, you know, God operates outside of time. And so just hang on. I had to take a journey with myself for about 5 years of being completely single, you know, healing in that process. And healing was not only a faith-based process, it was going for counseling, learning tools, doing all sorts of cognitive exercises and being within counseling. That really helped me to make sense at a different stage in my life, And I think that all prepared me for not only meeting Micah, but seeing Micah and then, and understanding him in ways that I would never see if I still had my old lenses.
Well, and I think the pain, like I always think about pain and love on a continuum, almost being the polarities. And the more pain you experience, the more love you can actually experience.
Yes.
And you and him exemplify that to a T, because you really are able to love at a different level than most couples that we come across.
And that's why I would also say, just in terms of talking about pain, and I know there are so many offshoots and I've gone down each one of them, confusing everything.
No,
I'm
it's
so
beautiful.
sorry. But I think in terms of pain, that's why pain is okay. Pain is a part of life. It's just a part of reality that I think if you can stick it through, if you can do what you need to do in terms of reaching. I mean, I wish somebody had told me in some of the formative, painful periods of my life, like Sydney's age. Like at 15, nobody told me I could go for therapy. Nobody told me I could ask for help. Nobody told me, etc., etc.
Hey there, are you looking for a place to talk openly about your struggles and receive the support you need? Well, Voyage Counseling offers licensed therapists that specialize in all kinds of services. Whether it's individual, couples, or family counseling, we have the right person for you. With over a decade of experience in mental health counseling, we know how to get you where you want to be. We have offices conveniently located in Central Park, Centennial, Castle Rock, and Colorado Springs. All sessions are conducted either in person or over a secure video chat platform. Our staff is composed of licensed professional counselors versed in providing therapy for anxiety, depression, trauma, ADHD, relationship issues, and even more. We accept most insurance plans, and many of our providers are in-network, so you can rest assured that your mental health needs will be met. Voyage Counseling is here to help you find solutions and make positive changes in your life. We're dedicated to helping our clients reach their goals and provide compassionate support along the way. Contact us today and learn more about how our services can benefit you. And the best way to get a hold of us is to simply visit our website at voyagescounseling.com. That's VOYAGES counseling, COUNSELING.com.
If you understand that pain is a part of life, it is something that grows you, that develops you, and if you are given the tools to accept this, to process this in community and in a healthy way, I think when it comes to answering your question around what would I do sooner or how would I process things quicker, I think if I had those, if I had that support, community, tools, and an understanding of how to process pain earlier in my life, it would be different. But the other side of that is that all things work for the good. And I just believe, I am where I am, and it's just in the right place.
You're really challenging you're creating a new perspective on pain. Pain itself is not bad. It's how we view it or who's around you to help you walk through it. And if we get stuck in our pain, it can be very debilitating and devastating. But if we can accept that pain is a part of our world and life, and that we can learn how to move through it with community, then we can grow and develop from it.
And of course, there's as therapists, I'm sure you know this much more than me, but from my understanding, the grief process within loss or in any kind of change or transition, I'm no expert on it, but I think, you have to go through the realness of all of those emotions, but I think the idea is not to get stuck. And that's why you need community in loss, you need community in grief, because, we're not meant to get through it on our own.
Well said. So I'm curious about your education. Despite the challenges, despite the racial issues growing up in South Africa, it turns out you became pretty well educated, pretty smart lady. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So when we became the new South Africa in 1994, education was open to everyone. Higher education, so we say higher education or university education was open to everyone. And so my dad I would have to attribute it to my dad really wanting his kids to have more than he had. So he sent us to a open school, which was then the schools that were previously white being open to everybody. And he made sure that we went to a high school that was open, and then he placed a real premium on higher education, because that was something that he was not afforded. And when I say he was not afforded, our community was not previously afforded. And so I would say that my dad really did push that, that we get an education, a good education. And I'm so glad that he did, because I think education really does empower you in ways that are important in your development.
Absolutely. And what did you get educated in when you got to university?
I did my first year in law, but that's because of the powers that be.
I just figured maybe that was inspiration.
But it
from
is,
Mandela.
and that is still very much in my bones. But then I just felt I needed to do a music degree. So I flipped it without asking.
So you went from law to music.
And there is
switch.
there's actually quite a correlation. And that's probably for another conversation. But I then did a music degree. I then traveled quite a bit for about most of my 20s. I lived outside South Africa. In my 30s, I built a school, and then I went back to school at 40.
Hard to say.
Hard to say. At 42, I went back to do a master's degree. And you can imagine the challenges, because everybody is, 10, 15 years younger, but that wasn't an issue for me. I think it was just the fact that learning had changed. Modes of learning had changed. Everything was online. Everything was digital. I'm an analog girl. Come on. I love my books, my aesthetics, feeling pages, my highlighters, and everybody's like, where do you come from? Great.
It reminds me of Legally Blonde when she shows up in the first law class and everyone has a laptop and she has her pink notebook with her pink pen.
Yes, and my yellow highlighter and my green. I'm like, But yeah, I went back to school and did my master's in cultural policy, which is a whole different subject. And so because previously my life had been performing arts and then education and then business within the performing arts and community work and non-for-profit. And this is just a whole different field. It's a new field that's more policy orientated. Yeah, and then did that at 42. And I think that's inspired from the fact that I really do believe that we are lifelong learners and that we can be anything at any age. And we're not, again, defined by locality, by age, by limitations. I know of people who have done their doctorates in their 50s and 60s and 70s, and I think that is the coolest thing,
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you knew this, but this was an interview and you're hired. So it sounds like you meet all the qualifications for the position we haven't created yet. So it sounds great.
Well, good to know. I'm jobless.
Denay, if I could change the subject for just a second, if that's okay. You talked about something that I'm very passionate about. You talked about being single in this world and how hard that is. And you said that you thought you'd never get married, right? We have different journeys, but I've experienced that myself, being 30, thinking, okay, I'm going to be single the rest of my life. And I think people need to hear this because it's a very hard loneliness and sometimes feeling isolated, sometimes having people look at you like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you married? And in my heart, it was, well, I'm waiting for the right one, right? I didn't want to just settle. But I love that you said that you took this time getting prepared.
Yes.
And maybe if you can just speak to how you just got to that place of peace, because I think, well, in my experience of being a therapist, there's a lot of anxiety around being single. And unfortunately, I don't think it's until we get to that peaceful place that we can be fully available to the right connection.
Yeah. Well, I think the result of me not being whole and trying to find myself in another man for a very long time brought me to the place of really getting and understanding that this is going nowhere. I'm settling because I'm broken, and I will always settle until I'm in a place where I am whole and I validate myself, and I love myself, and I can give myself all of what I'm trying to find somewhere else, and he can't give that to me, or it can't give me, or work can't give me that anyway. So I think I lived a very long time being in relationships that were not good for me. And even though I knew it, I couldn't really break out of the cycle until I got to the place where I really understood that all of this is a waste of time and a waste of energy, and I'm going to end up miserable every single time, and I'm building my house on the most unstable, shaky ground, and all this energy and hard work and 5, 6, 7 years of investment lands in bugger all, in nothing every time. And I think I just got really tired of the cycle. And until you do something new, it's insanity, And so...
And sometimes doing something new is remaining single, right? Not
it
jumping
was the
into
new
that
thing. It
pattern
absolutely
again.
was. That was the new thing. And I think you need to get to the place sometimes of being so sick and tired of being sick and tired. Because also being in these bad relationships always landed me so far out from who I was, from what I was supposed to do. I was so miserable, so far from me, so depressed, so dysfunctional every single time.
It almost takes you back from any progress that you could have made, because now we have to pick up the pieces of this new brokenness.
Correct. And every time the dividend of every single brokenness in relationships resulted in the same kind, but just more, because the older you get, you kind of realize you don't have time to waste. You don't, and you're collecting more and more and more dividends of brokenness for your life as you grow older, that it's kind of like you've really got to get to the point where you've had enough, I think, for yourself as a woman.
The longer we do that pattern, I've seen my clients go, oh, it must be me. There must be something inherently wrong with me. And it is something you're doing. Yeah. You're engaging and you're going after this wrong pattern, but it's not because there's something inherently wrong with you and you don't deserve love.
Right. And that's the thing. I think when you get to the place, so in my case, where I could understand that being in a relationship, many relationships, it was always because I was trying to fix me. I was lonely, and yes, we need companionship and all these things, but none of these relationships fill that gap anyway, because nothing I was looking for, they couldn't give me what I was really looking for. I needed to give that to myself. What I was looking for was self-love, wholeness, fulfillment. And that I needed to truly be able to give to myself first before I could meet someone like Micah. You know what I mean? But again, like Matt was saying, we do the best that we can until we get to the place of revelation and understanding, And so that maybe for me really points to the fact that it is so important for human beings to have access to tools, to understanding, to revelation, because until you know, you just don't know.
And to other people's stories.
Yes.
Right? Somebody out there listening to your story right now, this is going to resonate.
Oh.
Big time.
I hope so.
And maybe it carves off a little time.
Yeah.
For them.
Exactly. Because you don't have to perpetuate my pain. You don't why go down the same road when you can learn from me or learn from you. Or learn, but for girls, I have a real passion.
I could see you joining some of Brianna's podcasts.
I have a passion for this too.
Yeah. I did want to make sure we hit on this, right? Because you did just get married.
Yeah.
About a week ago, or a little over a week ago, right? 10 days ago?
22nd.
I wish you guys could see her face. Yeah. There's so much joy.
And radiating.
And I got to bring, obviously I consider Micah my best friend. And I got to bring my girls and family out to spend time with Micah and Denay and go to the wedding. And Sydney is sitting here.
Yeah,
She's sitting here in this podcast. She loves Denay. She loves Micah. And to be able to have my family and my girls like see your journey, you know, to have Sydney sitting here listening to you means a lot to me. But, you know, maybe you can talk a little bit about that week, having all your family and friends. And this girl is loved.
That's so kind.
Everywhere we went, the
I
energy
just met
that,
her and I'm drawn to her. I want to be with her more. Like, let's bring her in every day.
That's the Denay effect. Like the people just gravitate at the wedding, like the academy students that were more than happy to perform and be a part of it, and her friends and family, and everybody was genuinely out of this world excited for her. And maybe you can talk about what that was like for you.
Yeah. Very overwhelming, I think, to know that
you're so loved. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why I really do put a premium on relationships and living your life in such a way that you give it away, give your love away, give your gifts away. Be happy for somebody else when you're in the darkest place of your life. Because what these kids in my family don't know is that it was in my darkest moments of agonizing over my mom's death. I'm talking about in my 20s when you really need a mom. You know, being available to watch my twin sister be a mom and my niece, my cousins and other women celebrate motherhood, celebrate getting married. And here I was, sad ass. You know what I mean? But, here I was like, okay, does anybody see me? But being bigger than that, being bigger than your selfishness. It's not selfishness, but you know what I mean?
Desires.
Yeah. And no matter what, engaging in life, making a choice to be happy for other people, no matter what you're going through, making a decision to be a part of people and their lives in a genuine way. You know what I mean? That most of the times is going to take you out of your convenience, take you out of your comfort. And I think that our wedding day for me personally was just a reflection of the diversity of people that I love and that love me and that have come out of a life of trying, because I'm not perfect, but trying to love deep, love hard, engage, empower, transform, irrespective of the crap, the dark, the hurt, the depressing moments in my own life. It's just being able to rise above, and that rising above has sometimes been the most rewarding times of my life.
And it's the irony too is your wedding day. We're at this gorgeous cathedral in Cape Town. The history, the ambiance of where we were, and it starts raining.
Yeah,
and it hadn't rained all week, and it didn't rain much after that. But it rained during your wedding, and you know what you and Micah chose to do? Dance in the rain. We were out in the courtyard getting drenched, and we were dancing because that's not going to deter you. You're used to overcoming, right? There's been rain in your life, and you chose to overcome it, and it happened on your wedding day.
And you know what, Matt? I would say that would be dancing in the rain. Is kind of an epitaph. Is kind of I would say that's a what do you call it? It's a mantra, an anthem. But at the same time, I want to maybe just also say that I know what it's like to not be able to get up. I know what it's like to not be able to move in the sun or the rain. And so the humanity of it all is something that is so rich. And so I am so grateful that I've had my faith, people, community, teachers, mentors, family, to continually inspire the journey of this walk of continually deciding to overcome. And I'm saying so because, I'm no superhero, and I tend to very much focus on, well, you should and you can. But you know what? I have been in moments of absolute nothingness in my life, And so the road is not one of perfection. I think the road is just one of continuous decision to rise above, to overcome, to be better than. It's just...
But aren't those the best stories? When we think about a hero's journey, like that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's always the overcoming. Otherwise, we don't care.
Yeah.
You know, it's not interesting. It's not relatable.
Right.
Is there anything, as I know we have to wrap up, is there anything that you feel compelled to share, or like that you want the audience to hear, a takeaway, or anything that's important for you as you have the mic?
Yeah. I think if you don't remember anything I've said, I would say to anybody from anywhere across the world that you have the power to do anything. You really do. You know, the decision is yours.
I love that. I get to call this lady my friend, right? These are my friends, Micah and Denay, and I feel honored to just be a little part of your story.
Oh, I'm so honored. I'm so honored and so grateful.
Thank you so much for giving us your time today, Denay.
Such a pleasure, guys.
Lord, thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day, it's a beautiful day.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Voyage Cast. We hope we put a smile on your face and maybe taught you a few things along the way. Remember to stay tuned for additional life-changing content. We aim to please, truly. Also, if you do like our episodes and you do like what we got going on, be sure to give us a 5-star review and share this with your friends. And if you're feeling a little extra generous, be sure to join our Patreon. Thanks so much.
Let me tell you, okay, so singing,
I like big butts and I cannot. Girls can't do that. When a girl likes in with a little bitty waist and around thing in your face, you get it. I'll keep going if you want me to.
Yes, please.